Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today we are going to present about the connection between course of assessment principle and module used by English teacher in Senior High School 2 Padang Panjang. This lesson plan is for 10th grade of Senior High School entitled Descriptive Text. In this presentation, we focus on several aspects. Before that, let me introduce our member group. The first one is Hanifa Media. The second one is me, Telaah, and the last one is Sri Kurniawati. So the purposes of this course are: the first one is to understand the concept of assessment, the second one is to know the types, needs of assessment, and the last one is to distinguish and connect between theory in the course of assessment, the principle, and the module used by English teacher in Senior High School 2 Padang Panjang. Okay. For the next explanation, will be explained by Hanifa Media. So Hanifa, time is yours.
Okay, thanks to moderator for giving me opportunity to speak. And the first material is about assessment. According to Yana and friends, in 2020, assessment is the process of evaluating the attainment of learning objectives at a specific point in the learning process, using established criteria and then identifying and analyzing the outcomes. And according to Johanna and friends, in 2021, assessment involves collecting information to track progress and make decisions, while evaluation refers to the methods used to determine whether the expected objectives have been achieved. Measurement involves the procedures established to handle educational assessments. So, we can conclude that assessment is the process of collecting and processing information to find out learning needs, development, and achievement of student learning outcomes. Next, the purpose of assessment. The first one is evaluating students' learning. Assessment can measure the students' understanding about the material. Next, identifying learning gaps. It can determine areas which needs to improve and support. Next, informing instruction. It helps teachers to adjust their teaching strategies and methods based on the students' performance. Next, providing feedback. It gives constructive feedback to students and help them to improve and achieve learning goals. Next, monitoring progress. Teachers can observe and control their students' progress, development, and ensure they meet the learning objectives. The last one is guiding decision making. It supports the decision about the future plan for the teacher. Next, we come to the types of assessment. The first one is diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessment is conducted before instruction to identify student strengths, weaknesses, and prior knowledge. For example, pretest and language proficiency assessments. The second one is formative assessment. Formative assessment is ongoing assessments used to monitor student learning and provide feedback. For example, quiz, class discussion, and writing drafts. The last one is summative assessment. Summative assessment evaluates students' learning at the end of the learning. For example, final exams, end of term essays, and standardized tests. For example, national examination. Next, approach of assessment. The first one is assessment for learning, or we call it as AFL. AFL focuses on gathering information during the learning process to inform teaching and improve student learning. For example, quizzes, presentation, and project assignment. The second one is assessment as learning, or AAL. In AAL, students take an active role in their own learning by reflecting on and evaluating their performance. For example, self-assessment and peer assessment. And the last one is assessment of learning, or AOL. In AOL, assess what students have learned at the end of the instructional period to evaluate their overall achievement. For example, midterm tests, final examination, and national examination. The next material is about the needs of the teacher and the student. After the analysis of the lesson plan or modul ajar by English teacher from senior high school number 2 in Padang Panjang, we can identify the learning need. The first one is for the student. And the first one is active learning. The teacher can conduct active learning more, such as group discussion activity, then the student will present it in front of the class to increase the student active learning. The second one is skill development. Besides reading, the teacher can give writing skill assessment to develop that skill because the material is about text. Next, differentiated learning, or we call it as pembelajaran berdiferensiasi. The teacher can divide the student into some groups based on their learning style, characteristic, or their understanding from the material. Next, the motivation and engagement. It can affect the students from the family, school, or friends. Next, the last one is feedback and evaluation. The teacher can give feedback and evaluation after the assessment to improve their next performance. Next, the learning need in the teacher. The first one is technology. The teacher can use advanced technology to improve the media of learning and to engage the student attention in the class. Next, subject knowledge. The teacher have to master the subject of learning before they want to teach in front of the class. Next, classroom management. The teacher have to establish a positive learning environment for the student to engage the student motivation. Next, knowledge about the students. The teacher needs to know more individually or group about the student, including their characteristic, background, and the learning style of the student. The last one is professional development. The teacher can join some kind of activities such as seminar, workshop to improve the practices in the school. Okay, I think that's all from me. I'll give it back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you Hanifa. And for the next explanation will be explained by Sri Kurniawati. The Sri, time is yours.
Well, I will explain connection assessment with learning needs and student learning progress. Identify students' needs. Assessment can be used to identify student weaknesses and strengths. The information can be used to design a lesson plan that meets the students' needs. Providing feedback to the students. Assessment can be used to provide feedback to the student about the learning progress. The aim is to improve the learning outcome. Monitoring student progress. Assessment can be conducted to monitor students' progress. The information can be used to determine whether the students have achieved the learning objective. The other point are format. There are three formats of assessment used in the school. The first one is diagnostic assessment. Based on the analysis of lesson plan used by teacher, it found there are three types of diagnostic assessment. The first one is pre-test. The pre-test use trigger question to asking about top recent sport, like do you like traveling? Could you describe to me what the place look like? Where is the location? The second one is non-cognitive assessment using Aku Pintar application to identify student learning style and characteristic. The last one is cognitive assessment by using Aku Pintar application to assess student ability. The second one is formative assessment. The teacher use three kinds of formative assessment. The first one is attitude observation, such as fight, moral, independent, creativity, and cooperation. The second one is formative observation through reading aloud. This test used to assess student accuracy, pronunciation, and intonation using observation sheet. And the last one is cognitive assessment. Teacher conduct this test through written and spoken. For written, teacher use student worksheet. For oral test, teacher use assessment directly and assess using criteria rubric. The third one are summative assessment. teacher use three kinds of summative assessment. The first one is attitude observation. The second one is performance observation. The test is used to assess student fluency, accuracy, pronunciation, and intonation during presentation using observation sheets. And the last one, cognitive assessment. For cognitive assessment, the teacher use written and spoken tests. For written tests, the teacher use student worksheet, and for oral, teacher take directly. The other point are format. There are three formats of assessment used in the school. The first one is diagnostic assessment. Based on the analysis of lesson plan used by teacher, it found there are three types of diagnostic assessment. The first one is pre-test. The pre-test use trigger question to asking about tourism spot. For example, do you like traveling? Could you describe to me what the place looked like? The second point is non-cognitive assessment. Non-cognitive assessment use Aku Pintar application to identify student learning style and characteristic. And the last one, cognitive assessment. The cognitive assessment use Aku Pintar application also to assess student ability. The second one is formative assessment. Teacher use three kinds of formative assessment. The first one is attitude observation. This test is used to assess student attitude such as faith, morale, independence, creativity, and cooperation through observation sheet. The second point is performance observation through reading aloud method. This test is used to assess student accuracy, pronunciation, and intonation using an observation sheet. And the last one is cognitive assessment. Teacher conduct this test through in written and spoken. For written, the student use student worksheet. For oral test, assessments are taken directly and assessed using criteria rubric. The third one is summative assessment. Teacher use three kinds of summative assessment. The first one is attitude observation. The second one is performance observation through presentation. This test is used to assess student fluency, accuracy, pronunciation, and intonation during presentation using observation sheet. And the last one is cognitive assessment. The cognitive assessment point is similar to the formative assessment. Based on our group analysis, by connecting between theories of assessment principle and the instrument used by teacher, in general, these tests are good and in line with the principle of assessment. Based on our group analysis by connecting between theories of assessment principle and observation found in lesson plan, there are some strengths of assessment. The first one is the assessment instrument used by teacher in general are good and in line with the principle of assessment. The second one, the model used various assessment techniques such as a written test, performance assessment, and attitude observation, so that it not only measure cognitive abilities but also student communication skill and social attitude. The third one, this assessment is aligned with learning objective. And the last one, this assessment not only assess cognitive ability but also non-cognitive, social, and attitude. However, there are some weaknesses that need to be improved. The first one, the pre-test questions are too general and not focused on core material. The second one, observation criteria need to be more clearly detailed. For example, to assess student performance in reading aloud, the criteria could include aspects such as intonation, articulation, fluency, and expression. And the last one, scoring rubric for oral and presentation could be more varied to cover different aspects of skill that being to assess. There are some suggestions to improve the assessment. First, the pre-task questions tend to be general and not focused on the core material. The suggestion, the question like, do you like traveling, are too general. It is better to focus on topic to be taught. Second, observation lack of clarity. There is no detailed explanation about specific criteria or scale to assess the student in performance and oral tasks. So the student can use scale like very good, good, enough, bad, and very bad with the specific scale. Third, students should add more detailed assessment rubric to ensure objective of assessment. For example, assessing criteria such as fluency, accuracy, and intonation, or another aspect. Fourth, the pre-test assessment should be more specific and directly related to learning topic to be studied. Observation criteria need to be detailed more clearly. For example, to assess student performance in reading aloud, the criteria can include aspects such as intonation, articulation, fluency, and expression. And the last, the teacher could develop a more comprehensive rubric that assess not only fluency and accuracy but also another elements such as cohesion, mastery of learn material as using of media in interaction with audience. And also, teacher need a variation in learning method such as implementation, project-based learning, and use interactive technology to increase student engagement. The next point is tech design. From our group analysis in the school, the teacher used a SAI question. It gives students the opportunity to provide more in-depth and detailed answer based on review and connect between theories of assessment principle. In general, the test is appropriate and the difficulty of the question is suitable for the level of the student. However, there are some questions related to synonym or word meaning should include to the learning task. Additionally, the teacher must pay attention to providing feedback to help students improve.
Okay, thank you, Sri. Now we move to the reflection, will be explained by me. Okay, now we move to the reflection. The theories of assessment learned on campus emphasize the role of assessment as an integral part of learning process. These theories highlight the need for assessments to be aligned with learning objectives, support student growth, and provide meaningful feedback. On campus, we are introduced to various assessment types like diagnostic, formative, and summative that should be thoughtfully integrated to create a comprehensive understanding of student progress. However, during my experience in school, I found that implementing these theories into practice can be challenging. While the foundational principles are present, such as using assessments to support learning rather than just to measure it, there are gaps in application. For instance, rubrics are not always fully developed, and assessments are sometimes more focused on outcomes rather than the learning process. So the other things that we must learn in the future are, the first one is creating the right assessment. The second one is exploring project-based assessment technique. And then now how to create an assessment that refers to differentiated learning. And then creating an assessment that is in line with the teaching at the right level theory. And the last one is using technology in assessment. Okay everyone, so the conclusion is the connection between the assessment instruments used by teacher in the descriptive text module at Senior High School 2 Padang Panjang and the theory of assessment principles is aligned and good in many ways, combining various techniques such as written tests, performance assessments, and attitude observation. This assessment effectively covers cognitive, oral communication skills, and social attitudes. However, there is some aspect need to improve, especially in creating a more structured and specific pretest and developing a more detailed rubric with clear criteria for objective and consistent assessment. Improving this aspect will ensure that the assessment provides a more comprehensive and accurate evaluation of students